Hey, welcome back! I just saw the movie, The Mortuary Assistant, which is based on the video game on the same title. And full disclosure, my hopes for it weren't really high, and it's because, one, it was supposed to release in theaters on February 13th, and I don't know what happened. Like, I couldn't find a single theater that had it, nor could I find anyone online who actually saw it. My hunch is that it got cancelled, and then they just went for streaming, releasing March 27th. Which is not a good sign, you know? And second of all, the reviews that went in are really mixed. In general, we're around the 30 to 40% mark, which is, yeah, it's really low. It kind of sounds like another January movie, but in March. Hey, so this is me during the editing phase. I just want to let you know that I'm having a lot of copyright issues by using the trailer for this video. I had to re-edit this video 3 times so far, and it hasn't worked out even a little. So for that reason, I had to... You'll see what I had to do. I still don't know if it's gonna work, because I am currently re-editing this video again. So please let me know if you agree with what I did, and if you have any recommendations for what I could do in the future, seeing as if Shudder is this specific on how we use their trailer, I can't imagine how Nintendo's gonna be when I review their Mario movie. So with that said, thank you for your patience, and let's get on with the video. So before we get into the negatives, okay, because there are a few, I want to first talk about the stuff that I think the movie does right, which is the atmosphere and all the elements from the video game are practically in this movie. Going spoiler free, soundtrack that you can hear in the apartment at the very beginning of the game does appear in the movie, for example. All the elements of actually embalming a body, anything from sewing the mouth together to cleaning it to emptying the blood and etc. All of those gameplay mechanics are all in this movie. And what's also really cool is that this movie has 3 of the 6 endings that you can also unlock as well, who are made canon into the story itself, which I thought was quite nice. And speaking of story, the whole background story between the main protagonist, Rebecca Owens, and the past that she had that led her to that job is also kept in this movie. So the general vibes are there, you know, like she'll be embalming someone, something creepy will happen, and then we'll get snippets of her past, and then at the end of the movie we get the full story and why she's there, and obviously the entity, and even a little bit from the owner of the mortuary, who barely appears in the game. He is mainly there at the ending. He has a bigger role in this movie, and genuinely I think the casting for him is perfect. He looks exactly like his video game character. So all in all, I really liked it for that. You know, like you can see that they really tried to make a good movie, and they really tried to satisfy the fans by keeping everything here. Like nothing was really added into this movie. Every single element that you find in the game, or almost, appears here in some shape or form. And this kind of leads me to the negative, which is that I think this movie suffers from 2 things, which is, first of all, the video game is not scary. Okay, personally, I think that this is the kind of game where if you don't play horror at all, and then you end up playing this video game, it will be scary for you. But all the elements in the game are very basic, and you've seen it like a dozen other times in other games. What makes it scary is that this game perfected the idea that like you could be doing something, and then there's something in the corner of the eye, and then when you turn to look at it, it's already vanished. You know, that feeling of constantly being followed and watched is what makes the game for me, and what I think makes the game for all of us. You know, you don't really see much, but you see them here and there, you get glimpses, and then that essentially makes it a lot better. But because this is a movie, and obviously it needs to scare you all the time, well, you see way too much. You know, like that white guy that appears on the cover, for example, you might have playthroughs where he doesn't even appear. And even in those that he does appear, like it's only a fraction of a second or a second. You know, here you see him, let's say once every 20 minutes, and you do get a good view of him most of the time, lingering shots, if you will. There isn't a single instant, at least that I could find, where something is happening in the background and your character doesn't really realize it. You don't get those millisecond horror. Like, the shots are lingering for us, but for the character, it's not the case. Like, to her, it seems like a split second. And I think this then leads me to the second main negative, which is that this is a movie. It's a different medium. So because it's a different medium, they thought that the video game itself wasn't scary enough. Let's say, like, the game, kind of how it works is you get a lot of moments where there's nothing, and then when it does happen, it cranks in slowly, and then you get like a huge horror moment, which is usually tied to her past, and then when you get the climax of that, then it goes back to zero, and then you have like a decently long portion where nothing happens. The movie basically says, fuck that, the movie just skips over that, and then you basically go from 0 to 11, and then you stay at 11, and then when the plot needs it, we're back at 0, and then you get like a big expedition done where she's exploring and trying to find solutions, and then we get back up there, and most of the movie you're at that 11 mark. Like, she is constantly going through the motions. She is constantly going through some really messed up situations, very traumatizing situations, and because of that, like, it doesn't really feel scary, because like the scariest thing that you can do is finding horror in monotony. Like, right when the tension drops and you're calmed down, and then you can finally get invested in the plot, and then something happens, and then you get to crack that up. But the movie kind of forgets that point. All it does is try to put in as much horror as possible. And then this leads kind of to my last negative, which is that because this is a movie based on a video game, there's a lot of things that we take for granted that work in a video game that just don't work in a movie setting. Like, you just appear to your shift, you don't really know what you're doing, you listen to audio tapes that tell you what to do, and then you kind of go through it. Never at any moment do you wonder, why did this person accept the job? Or why did the owner not teach her anything related to these demonic entities? And why is she essentially forced to go through it all by herself? We kind of take it for granted because it's a video game and we're there to experience something new. Well, in the movie, she kind of looks like an idiot, and so does the owner, because they didn't try to adapt it for a movie format. They just went all in with how the video game presents it, which in turn damages the immersion factor and has a little bit of narrative dissonance. So I'm kind of not surprised, that like this movie got like a 30-40% review recommendation, because like if you didn't play the video game, there's a lot of stuff that's just stupid, and then the horror itself isn't representative of the video game. It's more in line with what you've seen at other places. It's just that you see a lot of them back to back, and it's non-stop for most of it. And then if you did play the video game, you'll be able to forgive those elements, but at the same time, because of how intense it is, it doesn't feel like it's representative of the video game as well. Your whole point is to find which of the three bodies is the one that's being possessed. So you have to embody all three, look at the signs, and then decide. Well, in the movie, that's not how that works. It kind of starts with the embalming, and then it's just horror way through, and then that whole segment is dropped down in favor of creating a more mainstream experience, and then we get the end of that. So, I don't know. Like, if I had to give it out of 10, I'm kind of conflicted, because if I had to make this movie myself, I kind of get where they were going. I just wish that there was more of the video game. Like, I wish that she would be embalming the whole time. It will get creepier as it went. And then we also have to guess which of the bodies is the one that is being possessed, which is not what happens in the movie. But then when you look at the movie, I think it's also way more interesting than the video game, because I get really bored of embalming, especially because every playthrough you have to embalm 3 of them, so it gets very repetitive really fast. It's more mainstream is what I'm gonna say. So like, if I had to give it a review, I think it's around the 5 mark, maybe 4, because like when I think about it, I don't really feel like rewatching this one again. But I am really happy I saw it. I appreciate the attempt, and I don't think it's the worst thing that I've seen in the world. But like, I don't know. I don't think it's enough to be worth the recommendation, but Who knows? If you do end up seeing it, please let me know what you thought. Do you understand why it didn't even go to theaters? Or would you have liked to see it in theaters? This movie has enough elements that it could actually be a fun watch on the big screen, but you do you. Please let me know in the comments. And at the same time, do subscribe, like, all of that jazz, the typical YouTube stuff. I hope to see you in the next one, which will be a review for the Mario movie. And depending on when you see this video, I might have actually released my bigger 1-hour retrospective and history cover of the video game called Demonology, which is based on the witch hunt trials happening in the 16th century in Scotland. So with that, thanks again for watching. Thanks for making this gamer's dream a reality, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.